The Battle of Little Bighorn remains one of the most infamous battles in American history. The Arikara Scouts, a group of brave warriors from the Arikara Nation who served as scouts for the U.S. Army, played a crucial role in the battle's outcome. As expert trackers and fighters, they were instrumental in gathering intelligence and engaging the enemy. In this video, we'll hear their eyewitness testimonies, providing a unique and intimate perspective on the events that led to Custer's last stand. Join us as we delve into the untold stories of the Battle of Little Bighorn and uncover the truths that history has kept hidden for far too long. Get ready to challenge your assumptions and discover the complexities of this pivotal moment in Native American history. So, sit back, relax, and let's embark on this fascinating journey together. As you watch this video, remember to click the like button and subscribe to our channel to support this community. General Custer told them of his plans for another journey and that their services might be required. Young Hawk decided to leave the Scouts, but his father insisted he stay. Later, Son of the Star received a letter from Custer asking for more Scouts. A council was held at Son of the Star's home and many attended. He said, "My friends, I've received a letter from a white man asking for some of you to serve as Scouts under Longhair Custer." This came as no surprise, as they knew of Custer's plans. Son of the Star had also visited Washington. Those who agreed to go included Bobtailed Bull, Stabbed, Charging Bull, Horns in Front, Young Hawk, Bull in the Water, Little Brave, Bloody Knife, Tall Bear, High Bear, One Feather, Running Wolf, Red Star, Strikes 2, Howling Wolf, White Eagle, Crooked Horn, Scabby Wolf, Pretty Face, Curly Head, Black Fox, and One Horn. Some scouts had already re-enlisted at Fort Lincoln. Red Bear agreed to stay with Crooked Horn until they could return to Fort Lincoln together. Fred Gerard led them to the commanding officer's office, where he presented Red Bear's permit. After a short wait, they were told to enlist, get uniforms and weapons. Following a medical examination, Gerard took them to Custer's office, where they met Tom Custer, who had a scar on his face. Tom raised his hand, and Gerard instructed the Indians to do the same. Custer arrived soon after and said, through Gerard, that they were the last scouts to join. Due to the expedition's readiness, they had to stay on duty at Fort Lincoln. Soldier and Bobtailed Bull met Custer at his riverbank camp, where he said, through Gerard, "Bobtailed Bull is a kind and noble soul. I'm glad he joined us. The upcoming journey will be tough, but we'll face it together like brothers. I'm pleased to have him by my side, and I spoke of him in Washington. We'll live and fight together like family for the Great Father's plan. The Sioux camps have united, and we must work together, support each other, and follow the Great-Grandfather's plan. The Great Father is pleased that Son of the Star readily agreed to provide scouts for our upcoming task. He's also grateful for Son of the Star's support in advancing his plan. I'm willing to do my part, and so must you, my brothers. If any of the scouts provided by Son of the Star fall in battle, their efforts won't be forgotten by the government. While their families will grieve, they'll find solace in the compensation provided by the United States government." Bobtailed Bull replied, "That's reassuring, my brother. My family will benefit from my wages and any additional rewards. I'm glad you mentioned this, as it shows there's gain even in sacrifice." Custer then announced no need for further discussion. Bobtailed Bull will lead the scouts, with Soldier as second in command. At dawn, the bugle sounded and the camp prepared to march. The army formed its ranks, and the scouts, led by Gerard, paraded on the fort grounds. With the parade concluded, Custer led the march. Dakota Scouts from Fort Lincoln joined the Arikara Scouts, including Koru, Mataksha, Michpiska, White Cloud, and Buffalo Ancestor. The initial camp was set up along the Heart River, with a herd of cattle accompanying the march to provide food. The white soldiers received their pay, but the scouts didn't receive compensation since they had just enlisted. To Arikara Scouts, Stabbed and Goose were sent ahead with a letter to deliver to the camp across the river, where Crow Scouts and their interpreter, Mitch Boyer, were stationed. When Custer's army reached Camp 20, Red Star observed the march from across the river. Stabbed and Goose returned with their report, and the army continued marching with the band playing. At Camp 20, the infantry, band, wagons, and some mules were stationed, and the horses of the scouts and cavalry were inspected. Custer and Bloody Knife rode by, and Bloody Knife said, "The general says we're all marching. There are many enemies ahead. If we attack and are defeated, we must retreat in small groups. Scouts, don't run away or return home. We were told that if our command broke up, we'd regroup at this camp." I was heartened to hear the band playing in the distance and saw cannons being brought along. We reached the Tongue River, set up camp, and marched to a hill overlooking the Elk River. We descended to the Tongue River and found an abandoned Dakota camp. A soldier's body lay there, beaten to death with only bones remaining. Custer gazed at the remains for a time. We found a burial scaffold adorned with black and red stripes, indicating a brave man's burial. Custer ordered the scaffold dismantled and instructed Isaiah, a black man, to remove the clothing and wrappings. A partially healed wound was visible on the body. We found small rawhide bags with horn spoons and moccasins. Isaiah disposed of the body in the river. We camped there, crossed the Tongue River the next day, traversed the Badlands, and established a camp at the Rosebud's mouth. A steamboat helped transport cannons across the Yellowstone. The group waited while scouts explored up the river. 2 days later, they returned with news of significant Dakota trails on both sides of the Rosebud. A camp opposite theirs had Crow scouts and an interpreter who joined them. They broke camp and proceeded up the Rosebud River. Howling Wolf, Running Wolf, and Curly Head were sent back with mail to the base camp. The scouts received 5 mules for their provisions. Gerard asked them to sing their death songs, anticipating a battle due to the Dakota Trail. Custer, with a heart like an Indian, suggested additions to their ceremonies. Mounted on horses, they circled around singing. Then they followed Custer, marching until halted. Custer directed to groups of scouts to advance on both sides of the river. The next morning, Bloody Knife emerged, leading a horse, having spent the night outside. The bugle sounded, and they prepared their horses. Custer led the way, with scouts flanking the army. Bobtailed Bull led one side, accompanied by Strikes 2 and others. At nightfall, they reached an abandoned Dakota camp with signs of a Sundance Circle. The Dakota scouts in Custer's army saw signs of medicine rituals, smoothed sand, and pictures. They warned that the enemy knew the army was coming. In a sweat lodge, Red Bear, Red Star, and Soldier saw a sand mound with figures of Custer's men and Dakotas, with dead men between them, facing the Dakotas. The Arikara Scouts believed this meant the Dakota medicine was stronger, predicting defeat for Custer's men. Marching along the Rosebud, they saw Dakota inscriptions on sandstone hills, including 2 buffaloes fighting. The Arikara interpreted this in various ways. In another sweat lodge, Young Hawk saw 3 red-painted stones, signifying the Great Spirit had granted the Dakotas victory. Soldiers saw offerings, sticks with buffalo calf skin, cloth, and valuable items, indicating a significant ceremony. All the Arikara understood this as a sign of Dakota's confidence in winning. Soldier later learned that Sitting Bull had performed ceremonies at this camp. After passing the buffalo inscription, they reached the Rosebud River Fork, where the Cheyennes are now. The 6 Crow Scouts and their interpreter returned, reporting abandoned Dakota camps along the Rosebud. The army halted, and the scouts ate on a hill. Custer arrived with his orderly, carrying his flag. The Arikara sat in a half-circle, with Stabbed on Red Bear's right. Custer sat, knee on the ground, asking, "What do you think of the Crow Scouts' report? They say there are large Sioux camps. What will be the outcome?" Officers gathered around the fire, standing beside it. Custer said, "Through Gerard, I want to lead them into battle and capture many Sioux horses." He extended his arms, happy to be with familiar faces. "Among you are faces I recognize from past trips. If we win, Bloody Knife, Bobtailed Bull, Soldier, Strikes 2, and Stabbed will proudly lead the brave young men in parade marches on our return. Custer said, when Son of the Star sees you in the parade, he'll be proud of his boys. To Gerard, he added, tell them that if we succeed, my brother Bloody Knife and I will represent them in Washington and maybe even bring them there. The bugles sounded and they marched on, led by Bobtailed Bull. They found another abandoned Dakota camp, large and sprawling. Signs of rain were evident, with sod disturbed to divert water around the tent circles. From here, they saw Custer's last locale, 12 miles away. They headed towards it, planning a brief supper stop before continuing through the night. The makeshift camp was on both sides of the Rosebud, and it grew very dark after supper. Across the river, Crooked Horn shouted orders to strike the lodge. Saddle up, Red Star, Red Foolish Bear, Black Fox, and Bull. Forked Horn led the group, and Red Bear learned that Bobtailed Bull had gone ahead at noon. This began the night march, and they rode until dawn. Exhausted, they dismounted for a brief rest and breakfast. Bull in the water and Red Bear unpacked a mule, and the former suggested, let's eat, for if we go to the happy hunting grounds, let's go with full bellies. Fetching water, they crossed the soldiers' camp where men lay snoring, fatigued. The camp moved on, horses trotting, and halted on a hill where Custer joined them. He ordered, proceed swiftly and capture the Dakota horses. Stabbed rode around, encouraging the young man, be brave, don't think like children. Today's battle will be tough. We've learned of a large Sioux camp ahead. Like a wounded buffalo bull, we fear even a helpless enemy. Stabbed prepared us young and inexperienced warriors for our first real battle. Standing apart, he rubbed clay between his hands, praying, Father, I recall your promises. I speak for my young men. Then he called us forward, one by one, to apply potent medicine to our bodies. He spat on the clay, then rubbed it on our chests. He had brought this special clay for this purpose. The mule train was left behind, with Pretty Face in charge of it.